The debate over GMOs continues to stir up as a national chain decides to pull genetically modified ingredients from its menus. Also, we take a look at viruses hitting livestock across the nation and how we can move forward from things like that. And of course, you get to meet the Farm Family of the Month. You're watching NTV's Grow. A major restaurant chain says GM over it as they put their foot down and say no more genetically modified foods. CEO of Chipotle says there's no consensus on the safety of GMO crops. Scientists say that's just not the case. They point to countless studies showing no ill effects of eating GMO crops or livestock that were raised on GMO crops. Most of the country's corn and soybeans contain bio traits, making them resistant to disease. Chipotle says GMO crops are bad for farmers, animals, and the environment. So you may wonder, why do so many people still oppose GMOs even though study after study claims that they are safe? A new report set to be released by researchers in Belgium says it may be all in your head. They say people make judgments on GMOs through intuition, not science. Researchers say anti-GMO activists have exploited people's fear, and that's tough to counteract. They say people need to remember GMOs are making agriculture more sustainable. So we here at NTV's Grow, we want to hear from you. What do you think? As producers in the field, how do you feel about growing corn and beans with GMO traits? And what would you like consumers to know about biotech crops? We invite you to join our conversation on Facebook, also on Twitter. Natural, organic, raised without antibiotics. There's a lot of claims on labels, especially meat labels out there. So you might just wonder as you go down the aisles, what do they all really mean? The average meat case at the grocery store has more than 135 different items. Those labels can get confusing. Kansas State University meat specialist Travis O'Quinn says the most misunderstood term is natural.
The claim that's easily misunderstood by consumers most commonly is the term natural. Most consumers think that it has something to do with how the animal is raised. Well, that's actually not the case at all. The term natural just means that the product has no artificial ingredients, no preservatives, and is actually minimally processed. So actually most fresh meat products that are purchased in the meat case would qualify for the natural labeling claim.
And there's one way to tell the difference between marketing claims and regulated claims. If the term is on the meat label, it's regulated by USDA. If it's in the sales materials around the food, it's just marketing. Food safety experts say no matter how the product is raised, it's all checked for safety.
A lot of people were expecting that there would be a bit of a slowdown in organic food consumption with the recession because it's long been considered something that only higher income people will purchase. But it appears that it's crossing across different income brackets, and people with kids and people who care a lot about the environment, that's a pretty wide group.
Tyson Meat says that it wants to stop using human antibiotics in chickens by September of 2017. Then they will also explore trying to do the same thing in beef, pork, and turkey. The move comes as restaurants are demanding more natural produce, amid concerns widespread antibiotic use can lead to drug-resistant germs. Arkansas-based company said it would also back research into disease prevention and antibiotic alternatives. Now, natural, organic, it seems to be on a lot of consumers' minds, and the production is at an all-time high. But experts say that doesn't mean the price of those products will budge. Organic production in the United States is setting records, up 250% from 2002, according to USDA. Economists say that trend is not what they were projecting.
A lot of people were expecting that there would be a bit of a slowdown in organic food consumption with the recession because it's long been considered something that only higher income people will purchase. But it appears that it's crossing across different income brackets, and people with kids and people who care a lot about the environment, that's a pretty wide group.
Taylor says because there's so much demand, prices for organic products won't be coming down anytime soon. Many of those Nebraska farmers hit the fields here this last week to get that planting season underway. Here's a look at an update from the USDA. USDA says planting slowed a little bit last week due to rains and cool soil temperatures. However, corn planting on schedule, 16% planted so far, near the average 17%. More rain is needed. Only about 60% of topsoil and subsoil moisture is rated as adequate. Meanwhile, in Kansas, winter wheat crop is showing signs of stress from disease and drought. The National Ag Statistics Service says 31% of the state's wheat is in poor to very poor condition. Spring planting continues, 32% of corn now in the ground. And a local community college puts the focus on sustainability. CCC has added recycling and composting to its campuses. They're also doing more classes through online video. They are experimenting with 4-day school weeks in an effort to save energy. Sustainability is also part of the conversation as they add a new ag-related program. CCC's goal is an institution to be climate neutral by 2034. Modern pioneers restoring the prairie to where it was before the original pioneers. NTV's Grow co-host Steve White explains.
So much was gone.
The prairie that attracted homesteaders was all but gone in much of Nebraska when Bill and Jan Whitney set out in 1980 to restore native grassland before it faded into history.
To have some remnants to understand how the soils were formed.
They founded the Prairie Plains Resource Institute.
As sort of field laboratories.
They maintain 7 properties with a goal of restoration.
It is difficult because it takes prairie a long time to develop roots and grow and get rid of the weed plants.
Bill says many are surprised to learn they don't know what prairie is, that farming changed the land, but agriculture can still be viable on native grasses.
It's also a sustainable livestock resource. You can have the wildlife and you can have the prairie plant life and use it in ranching.
This time of year is the busiest.
In the greenhouse, they work with hundreds of plant species. Some they sell to help fund the nonprofit work. And last year, they planted their 10,000th acre.
They're anything from wetland plants to upland plants for all our prairie restorations.
Bill says prairie is highly diverse and adaptable to changes in climate, plus promotes wildlife and prevents erosion. Besides reminding us of what was, they collect prairie seeds as a genetic resource to be sown for the future.
Believe that it's important to save these areas. There might be something very useful in the future because of this.
We are beginning the month of May, and the governor claims it is Nebraska Beef Month. In his 4 months on the job, Governor Ricketts has shown himself to be a supporter of Nebraska beef. He recently traveled to the Big Apple to tell them about the beef state. Nebraska continues to rate #1 in all the country in some key areas, including cattle on feed, beef exports, commercial cattle slaughter. We're second for total number of calves and cattle. And the governor has said he will continue to promote Nebraska beef around the country and around the world. Work is underway on a $45 million animal health lab. University of Nebraska broke ground for the new veterinary diagnostic center this past week. VDC is Nebraska's only accredited lab of its kind, helping with disease surveillance, which should help protect the state's livestock industry. They say it'll be a cutting-edge center, replacing one built in 1975. They say no longer meets modern standards. The bird flu outbreak continues to grow. The most recent report shows 200,000 turkeys impacted in Minnesota. In Iowa, agricultural officials say 5 more farms likely affected, including egg-laying operation. The announcement means the Midwest losses will top 20 million turkeys and chickens. As for the cause of the outbreak, disease officials believe portion of the H5N2 virus came from European and Asian strains of bird flu. They say those strains mixed with North American one less likely to cause severe illness as birds from different regions crossed migratory paths, but officials are not sure how it got transmitted to commercial barns. When outbreaks like these happen, it spreads concern across the ag industry. But there is a chance to learn from this instance, and Ag Director Greg Ibaugh, he explains what we can do as we move forward.
In the news a lot, we've
heard about PEDV, now avian flu, those things, and that makes a lot of people wonder, you know, one, PEDV impacted a lot of hog operations. Moving forward now, are there things that we learned from that, for instance, that we're going to keep improving on? What do you think?
Well, I think that, yeah, we did learn some things through how we can control and protect ourselves, employ more biosecurity on our farms and ranches that we not only use in the swine industry, but you know, across species. But I think we also need to realize that, you know, migratory birds are what's bringing in the avian flu right now. And so there's certain things that we just can't protect ourselves from, and that they migrate around the globe because animals, birds, and people migrate around the globe. And so I think what's most important is that, you know, as a state vet and as, you know, the federal animal protection system kicks in, that we have mechanisms in place to help farmers know how to deal with those, help them understand how they can do all they can to protect themselves. But, you know, if something does, you know, come in a vector that we can't control, like migratory birds, that we're ready to deal with it as well.
You've heard reports of those recommendations for dietary guidelines. We get the Ag Director's response on those coming up after the break. Stay with us.